Good morning. Welcome to our educational webinar on Master Planning for Content Management presented by RKO Management Solutions. My name is Sean Fitzpatrick, one of the principals at RKO, and I'll be presenting today's topic. Why attend this session? There are 4 key points we would like to take away from today's session. By participating, you will learn that there are ways to increase the effectiveness of your enterprise content management program to provide clarity. Your business has the need for content management. IT has tools already that provide content management. Stakeholders and sponsors are seeking clarity on how you will solve those problems with the existing tools, not just for a single department, but the whole enterprise. Today, we'll introduce a concept called master planning that will start you off in that direction of providing a program that is scalable and sustainable at an enterprise level. Reduce costs. The cost to own, manage, and deploy content management is very expensive and usually dependent on multiple costly contractors, excessive customizations, duplication of functionality and solutions, and of course the exorbitant amount of cash needed to continuously maintain these systems. Today we'll map out some common sense ways to plan for repeatability, standards, internal ownership, resulting in more cost effectiveness for your program. Speaking of repeatability, today you'll learn the basis for which to reduce the time needed to deploy content management solutions to your business units. And finally, as all of the elements of master planning start to assemble, you'll be much more effective in generating true ROI, not just for the enterprise, but for the business units and end users themselves. Before we get started, just a quick reminder. Please ask questions throughout the webinar as they come to mind. You can ask your question in the GoToWebinar console. All questions will be compiled and answered in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Also, this session is being recorded and will be available on RKO's YouTube site later in the week. Today's agenda will be wrapped up within 20 minutes. After some brief introductions, we'll review content management program challenges, quickly talk about what CIOs are looking for out of content management programs, and then spend the most of our time reviewing the concepts of master planning. First, a quick overview of RKO Solutions. As an organization, we're completely focused on content management and records management, but not just putting content into a repository. Our key design principle is to generate elated users of solutions we deploy. We do that by making sure there's something in it for the whole organization, the stakeholders, and the end users. The experience our people have in this field exceeds 150,000 hours, and so we feel we know the secrets to successfully implementing these types of solutions to ensure true value for your organization. Finally, we're constantly looking for ways to build value for the organization by delivering content management solutions faster, easier, and at less cost. Today, we're introducing the basis for that philosophy, which is ECM platform agnostic. This is what we call RKO Master Planning. From a technology perspective, RKO is primarily partnered with IBM's Smarter Content Solutions, which can often leverage your enterprise Microsoft SharePoint as well. RKO while focused on content management, provides a variety of services including program consulting, workplace solutions for accounts payable, legal departments, controlled documents such as standards, procedures, and work instructions, facilities management, customer onboarding, and many other solutions. In this next set of slides, let's do a level set on what content management is, the maturity of the concepts, and what the key challenges are that organizations face today. Over the years, vendors and analysts have shaped the definition of enterprise content management. Unfortunately, only bits and pieces of that marketing or information find their way to the business, often causing confusion. So in each engagement, we start with what RKO views as content management. This may differ from your view, and that is okay, but it's the basis for the master planning concepts introduced later in this presentation. Dating back to the late 80s, ECM really started out as capturing and storing content. In today's world, the green box represents our ability to conduct advanced and intelligent document capture and data extraction. This is not limited to scanning paper. Capture today includes archiving, email capture, computer output such as POs, invoices, and EDI. The blue box started out as a document management It started out as document management, but has evolved to what we today call collaboration. This is our ability to apply metadata, controls, security, organization to share our content with others for their input. While capture and management occur at the back end, our end users or consumers of the content generally retrieve and interact with it through custom third-party business applications, often integrated with your ECM, such as SAP or claims management systems, custom intranets, custom portals, or custom extranet. Over the years, these solutions have been proven very popular, very valuable, and very expensive to both build and maintain. Throughout this time span, workflow has also been a big part of routing and approving content for one reason or another, from routing accounts payable invoices, automating claims, to approving a new company standard. Today's workflow has advanced to a more dynamic case management type structure, providing knowledge workers with flexibility to adjust and adapt to workflows to suit their needs without having to run to IT to build new workflows. Most workflows today also start out with an electronic form of some sort. Forms are typically intelligent with automated data entry and digital signature capabilities. Electronic forms are also easy to create, provide a lot of value to the organization and their end users. Records management, the process of applying auditable retention and disposition to your content, typically to meet regulatory or legal compliance requirements, is also just good business practice. We'll talk more about this later. It will become a key component of defensible disposal, which in the end can save the organization, particularly IT, significant dollars. Finally, enterprise search continues to play a growing role in our content management programs. However, enterprise search is not just a search engine or a SharePoint search. The power of search is only really effective with a strong information architecture, which we'll talk more about later as well. Something that we see more and more organizations using to enhance their search is the concept of content analytics. Normal language in the content is analyzed and related to other content, allowing us to achieve those Amazon and Google type search results. If you're looking for document X, you may also want to consider document Y, and that's what we're trying to achieve in these types of scenarios. So let's talk about content management maturity. Most companies tend to never get past the few rollout stage within their ECM program. But these rollouts contain one or many elements of the content management that we just presented in the previous slide. The trend has been organizations put in the sophisticated infrastructure we just described, justified by some key needs such as drawing management, a new claims process, etc. This generally continues with additional siloed solutions across the organization that can be cost justified, generally producing numerous custom applications and additional third-party software solutions, also providing the same or similar functions. SharePoint, very powerful platform, typically started out to replace the shared drive. The problems caused by uncontrolled shared drives that ECM was supposed to solve is now morphed into a different set of problems caused by uncontrolled ECM deployments. We have customers reporting they have 2,000 employees and 2,000 sites. So where SharePoint is most popular today and adding the most value is the platform for intranets and portal applications. Realization with all of these sites and siloed deployments is that I still can't find what I'm looking for when I need it. It should be easy, but it's not because there's not common naming or filing standards. Most content is still missing a lot of metadata. This is when standards are seen to be important, and this becomes a more common inflection point to take a longer-term strategic approach and a great opportunity to implement content management master plan. A program that allows you to define standards and leverage existing experience and deployments to get more done for less in a controlled manner with better findability of information. So let's talk a little bit more now about CIOs. As a result of history, most organizations, and particularly CIOs, still face the same old problems, which we will review in this next section. It is important to recognize these challenges so that we can learn and address the needs in our master plan. Based on the 2011 AIM study, most organizations had multiple content management systems. Think about your own organization for a moment. I'll bet most of you have a legacy ECM solution such as a Hummingbird or Documentum or something along that lines and as well as some implementation of SharePoint. Likely a few specific departmental software systems to manage HR documents or contracts or even accounts payable documents. I won't even mention the fact that there's probably custom-built applications throughout. There's the file share still, and of course Exchange and Outlook that's holding a lot of our content today as well. This is our reality today. We have multiple places where we store content, and as much as people have tried, it's not going away. As a result of multiple repository options, our business units are confused and are seeking guidance on which tools are best for them. That's typically what we hear and when we see when we meet with CIOs. Without this guidance, direction, and vision, our business units are out looking for specific point solutions, Dropbox, Box, and Google to quickly fill their business needs. This exacerbates the problem potential for organizational risk even further. We need to address this. The best way to do this is to understand the type of content we have in our organization and provide the business with the most appropriate tools for the job. Something that I refer to quite frequently and that I really enjoy is some analysis that's been done by Forrester Research. This analyst group has done a good job at categorizing at a high level different types of content in an organization. Understanding your content is key. In most organizations, content and content-based processes generally fall into one of three categories. Transactional. So transactional content is generally customer-facing, single version, long-lived, and high volume. These types of content are scanned images, forms, computer reports, etc., and are considered a pretty big corporate asset and frequently used specifically within the first year of creation. Business content is low volume but high value content, often versioned, reviewed, and published for internal consumption and considered a corporate asset as well. Types include most office documents, working papers, intranet content, operational policies and procedures and standards that often go through multiple versions and revisions and approval workflows. This is really our where collaboration really comes into effect. Persuasive content, which is public or partner or broad employee-facing content assets that get reviewed and approved and may get versioned. Usually it's HTML or XML and can be dynamically delivered. This is often our intranet, our portals, and our extranet type applications. Understanding this categorization is important as it forms the basis for planning which software solution to use and prioritizing ECM opportunities that best align with high-level corporate strategy and initiatives. So let's talk a little bit about content management ROI, because this is another big topic for CIOs. With the exception of mission-critical ECM solutions, traditional custom implementations, regardless of the technology platform, are just too expensive for most parts of the organization. They just can't justify the cost. The dilemma is most business units or work groups don't need complex solutions, but a simple SharePoint out-of-the-box site won't do either. In addition, too many specialized and proprietary point solutions are expensive and unsustainable in the long term for any IT organization, not to mention the risk and lack of enterprise value associated with content in many unconnected sources. IT budgets are stretched, just keeping infrastructure and systems on pace with growth and upgrades. As a result, most new implementations are paid for by the business, and if the business is paying, you can be assured it has to have value attached, usually in the form of productivity increases, business enhancement, or risk mitigation. To keep costs in check, implementations have to become more streamlined, less custom and costly, but still meet the personal needs of the business unit. So basically, they want their cake and eat it as well. And I guess why not if they're paying? Today, the ROI has to come from all levels. Even if the business unit is paying, at the enterprise level, executives want more access to valuable data locked up in departmental content. It drives efficiencies across departments and allows the different work groups to enhance the way they do business and make decisions. Knowledge and insight is handy that way. Finally, with the enterprise and business units achieving benefit, let's not forget about our end users. They're the people who work with the content day in and day out. Yes, solutions have to be easy to use, but we have to make the whole process better than the way they're doing it today. That it is the day-to-day business, the job or operation that they work. This is the sexy part of ECM that we have to work harder to unlock. So to summarize, the content management challenges CIOs have to overcome today are primarily A, juggle multiple ECM platforms, provide clear ECM strategy, methods, roadmaps, and priorities, provide solutions that easily accommodate different types of content, find ways to deliver solutions quickly, less expensively, yet provide value beyond a single work group or business unit. So now we're off into master planning. Ultimately, we're trying to build an approach that embraces a method for deploying multiple ECM solutions that can provide benefit not just for our individual users, but the organization as a whole. Through reduced deployment and sustainment costs, better access to information, and deployments that meet corporate governance needs, we can do this. Before master planning, a common analogy used in IT to help non-technical people understand the process of implementing solutions is to refer to the architecture and plans of building a house. Makes sense. Before we build a house, or in our case, a content management solution, we need to spend some time on the architecture and design. Then get a foundation in place, then build out the solution. But what happens when you need to build a second or a third house? Or in the case of ECM, when we need to build many content management deployments, all with perceived unique needs. As a result, our analogy can only go so far when we're talking about a single house. We're not just building a house here, but instead we're building an entire community of houses. So let's talk what this might look like with master planning. So like a subdivision, a master plan defines standards and implementation governance. It speeds the requirements, design, and implementation process for future business units because it leverages the pre-work, experience, the templates, the reusable materials, and the work completed by previous implementations. Each subsequent phase becomes better, less costly to deliver. Standards are in place, so maintenance is repeatable, specialized skills are contained, and economies of scale are achieved. This is where the Master Plan Center comes into play. Master Plan Center is the heart of ECM master planning activities, which we're going to talk more about here for the rest, pretty much for the rest of the presentation. It's the place where your collective ECM knowledge resides, knowledge pertaining to governance, industry best practices, and the experience from your implementations can be captured and leveraged for your deployments, for your future deployments. So let's get right into the Master Plan Center. Master Plan Center is designed to manage 5 key facets of an ECM program, which include team members, infrastructure, standards, materials in place for your deployments, and cutting across all of these is the governance of how and when to use them and how to sustain them. While many companies often know to prepare team and infrastructure components for an ECM deployment, without an enterprise program, they're unable to leverage previous experience, standards, materials, and governance. After a few deployments, organizations will often find themselves with an expensive, tangled web of inconsistent, siloed deployments, and reliant on expensive contractors, or a few resources, often bottlenecking implementations. The master plan helps to avoid these issues by providing structure and repeatability, evolving expertise into each iterative deployment. Each deployment over time will add to and expand to the enterprise content management solutions across your company. Now, all of this might look intimidating, but on a very important note, the Master Plan Center does not have to be complete before implementations can take place. What it is recommended, though, that the basic frameworks and processes get put in place to manage, track, and govern the artifacts and the knowledge that gets gathered over time and over each implementation. Let's spend a little bit of time and step through each of the 5 facets. The team selection is straightforward. Most organizations already have processes in place to build out team structures. However, when it comes to teams, if you have the opportunity, select people who will have a stake in a positive outcome of your program. Infrastructure is also straightforward. These are techniques and technologies and skills you will need to acquire or subscribe to over time. I say over time because you don't have to go out and acquire all of these up front. Many times it's more cost-effective to buy on demand. That said, you do need to have knowledge of the tools and their capabilities and be able to present to your stakeholders so that they understand those capabilities and options that are available to them. What we're trying to accomplish here is to avoid buying duplicate technologies within the organization. The third facet is standards. This is an important part of the program. Again, it doesn't not necessarily have to be completed before implementations can begin, but the frameworks and the baseline data populated within these frameworks should be in place. Our goal here is to build consistency amongst implementations in the way in which we implement. Consistency will allow us to connect systems, search and retrieve more efficiently, and apply records management policies more systematically and in an auditable fashion. The more we pay attention to standards up front, the less costly it will be down the road to sustain and untangle inconsistent implementations. It's the old saying, pay on the way in or pay on the way out. An additional benefit of standards will set expectations for users and business units when they go to implement. And finally, standards will reduce ramp-up time for IT people, consultants, and business analysts as they transition in and out of your ECM program. The fourth facet is materials. I find this area of the program the most exciting. So the goal here is to build up a catalog of reusable materials and knowledge that can be used to streamline future ECM implementations, resulting in lower cost and improved solutions. We came across a company a few years back where they had 8 custom search applications that essentially did the same function. In this scenario, as the customer upgraded, they now had to refine, test, and QA 8 separate applications. The cost is expensive. If they had a catalog of materials already built, they could have easily leveraged the existing application, saving significant upfront time, cost, and avoided the longer-term support and maintenance expense associated with those apps. The fifth facet is governance and sustainment. You likely already have similar programs in place for other enterprise applications, or even better, you may already have a program in place for ECM which you can leverage. Governance is critical for ensuring the objectives around infrastructure, standards, and materials are met in a controlled but pragmatic manner. The Master Plan Center attempts to address all these needs for faster, lower cost, higher quality solutions by taking all these best practices and governance and the combined knowledge to guide your implementation processes. As you might imagine, standards will play a big role in each implementation. It starts with a standard methodology. The one that you see on your screen is very short and very light, but it's really going to be based on what are the best practices and the standards within your business. This process will go through the typical steps for an implementation, but these steps are again guided by principles defined in the Master Plan Center that alter the depth, the complexity, and the length of your process based on the type of deployment you're being asked to build, the complexity of that deployment, and ultimately how that deployment is to be sustained. Lessons learned from each deployment and the artifacts created are then fed back into the Master Plan Center to reduce the time and expense of subsequent iterations and, of course, increase the quality of future iterations. Deployment type, by our definition, is based on content ownership. So ownership becomes a key driver of how content is governed. Traditionally, ECM deployments have been what we refer to as departmental deployments. They may or may not span departments or deployments, and they may be managed by only a small group within a deployment. But ultimately, the content and any associated risk is to its governance. It's owned by a single department. They typically have long retention periods, but also typically contain corporate records. So examples of these would be your typical mission-critical tactical deployments, such as engineering drawings, accounts payable, claims processing, employee HR file management, etc. Team deployments at the other extreme are typically fast, and fast deployments requiring minimal governance and retention needs. Ownership resides across the team, collaborating the topic at hand. So any outputs may feed a departmental or a corporate requirement. For example, the team site is used to collaborate on the creation of an RFP. But most of the content within would be considered work-in-progress information that is disposed of or archived at the end of its life cycle. Once complete, the RFP document becomes a corporate record and the site is decommissioned. This category is essentially in place to help govern the rapid deployment demands that we've come to expect from tools like SharePoint. The rarer of the three deployment types is the corporate deployment. This is an example of where the content has long retention needs, but ownership is spread across departments throughout the enterprise. We typically see this for corporate intranet deployments, corporate policies and procedures, records management programs, etc. While every company will have a few corporate deployments, the vast majority of effort will really be in the departmental deployments, and by sheer number, team deployments will ultimately outnumber the other two types combined. Complexity is a determining factor in how much investment in time and money should be needed to create the deployment. Ideally, if the requirements are basic, then the provisioning of that system should be virtually automatic. It should be as simple almost as someone filling in a form. For example, if somebody asks for basic routing and approval workflow for contracts, chances are that it's been done before in a similar way, and with little or no effort, that system should be able to be created and replicated. With an intermediate deployment, there's incrementally more effort to take some base templates and with some design work, build a partially customized solution for the user. But again, we're leveraging the base templates. And then will always be the advanced deployments, which of course require an almost completely customized approach. This is typical of what you would see most times today in organizations who are deploying ECM. But savings are still realized in this type of deployment because we still get to reuse templates for design and deployment, such as the requirements gathering templates or change management guidelines, etc. The team also leverages prior work done in information architecture that defines metadata strategies. So the implementation strategy within master planning is based on common sense, industry standards, and of course your corporate best practices. We're now towards the end of our presentation. So to wrap up the session, we'll review some key principles. One of the first core things is to set up a center of excellence. At the very least, having an area for knowledge and materials of each implementation to be retained and cataloged is invaluable as your program grows. Embrace multiple repositories and leverage what already exists today. This is our reality. We've got multiple repositories in our organization, so we should embrace it and use the best tools for the job at hand. Instigate basic metadata frameworks and guidelines. Make sure that they occur. This is going to allow you to better have a better findability, easier and faster implementations, and less confusion amongst your business units. Build out repeatable templates and materials. Every implementation or element added to the program should have repeatability in mind to lower costs of implementations and ongoing sustainment. And finally, be iterative. As part of your program, circulating the learnings from each iteration back into the program. This will help you implement faster at a lower cost and of course with higher quality in the end. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today on this webinar. If you have any questions, please submit those to our panel now. Otherwise, my contact details are listed here on this slide, and look forward to hearing from you if you have any other questions, comments, or feedback on this presentation. Thank you for joining us today.